back, everybody, to the Bean Museum. My name is Marin, and I am here for Life Science Live today. We're here in our specimen room where we have all of our various different stuff that we bring out to show you guys. I just thought it'd be a cool place to talk about what we're talking about today. We are talking about vestigial structures. Now, that term is used in evolutionary science when talking about body parts that used to serve a purpose for an organism, but as that organism evolved, it no longer serves a purpose, but they still have it. So, let's talk first a little bit about evolution. Now, we often hear the phrase, evolution is survival of the fittest, but it's not entirely quite true. What evolution is evolution is survival of the good enough. All right, so sometimes we hear about animals and we're like, how does that still survive? How does that animal, with doing so little, how does it continue to survive? Well, it's not because it is the most fit for its environment. And even when we say survival of the fittest, it doesn't mean fitness meaning like, they've got good cardio, they're very strong, they're the healthiest specimen. It simply means that they're able to pass their genes on from one generation to another, and that is fitness. So to us, when we think of fitness, we usually think of like the most perfect fit, but in evolution, it just means good enough. So for example, when we look at different animals, there's going to be certain parts of them that aren't really necessary anymore. So for example, if you look at whales, whales will still have hip bones. They're not even really connected to anything. They'll have the structure of their backbone right there, and then they'll just have, not connected to any bones, some leg and hip bones that are vestigial structures. They're left over from when this organism that used to live on land and slowly transitioned to water, as they passed their genes along, the ones that were most fit for that environment, or the ones that were good enough, like I said, the ones that were good enough for that situation, they lost the bones in their legs. They didn't need them. It was better to have a tail. So the tail elongated and the legs began to disappear and eventually disappeared entirely, except for some of the bones. Now sometimes evolution will, it'll kind of weed out things that are detrimental to an organism if it's something that's not good for that organism. Like if the legs were getting in the way and it was causing too much energy to be used in those things, then they'll slowly evolve out of it. However, if it's not detrimental, if it's just kind of there, then it's not a problem. We see this all the time. We just don't even realize that they are vestigial structures. So for example, any flightless birds, any at all, they have vestigial structures in their wings. Now, wings are adapted for flight. That was the original purpose of them, for flight or for gliding. And so when a bird no longer flies or glides, there's no purpose, not the main purpose of having those wings. So for example, an ostrich, even if they use their wings for things, if they use them to help them kind of while they're running, they're still considered vestigial because they aren't used for flight. So penguins, ostriches, emus, all of those guys, all their wings are vestigial structures. We also see a lot of vestigial legs or hip bones in lots of animals that once had legs in their evolutionary past and no longer do in future organisms. So for example, snakes. There are lots of kinds of snakes that you can actually see around their cloaca, which is just the hole where they lay eggs and poop and pee. They have little tiny bones that stick out called spurs. And those spurs are the remnants of what once were legs. They're the remnants of hip bones. So we can even physically see on the outside vestigial structures in the skeleton of certain organisms. There are even some types of lizards that have evolved out of legs, essentially. So they look like snakes, but they are closer related to lizards, and they're classified as lizards because they have certain structures that the snake does not. So we might be able to see, oh, snake doesn't have legs, legless lizard has no legs, therefore they're closely related. But if we look at a legless lizard, we can see that they have eyelids and a similar ear structure that's different from the snake, which does not have either of those things. Now, what's also really cool is that humans themselves have vestigial structures. So you have vestigial structures. You actually have muscles up here around your ears that originally their evolutionary purpose was for moving ears around. Think like in, if you watch like your dog or your cat, if they're listening for something, their ears perk up and they'll sometimes kind of turn them in different directions, or they can lay them down back like this. That is what that muscle would have been for, was to move ears in different directions to try and catch sound. But as the previous human evolutions, as they evolved, that muscle was no longer needed, but it wasn't really taking up too much energy. It wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't detrimental to their fitness, and so it stayed. So we still have a muscle here in our heads that doesn't really do much. Some of us can still wiggle our ears just a little bit. I can, just the tiniest bit, but it doesn't really do much. It doesn't benefit us in any way. Another really common one that you might know about is your appendix, a whole organ that doesn't really serve a current purpose. It's called a vestigial structure. A lot of people, it's not detrimental to them unless it becomes infected. They get appendicitis and have to have it removed. But other than that, it just kind of hangs out in your body, and there's no real reason for it as of right now. There used to be one in previous forms of evolution, but not in this one. Now, one last cool one that you can see really well, and this is cool for me because I have this vestigial structure in one hand, but not the other, which is kind of weird. So you can see if you have this vestigial structure by putting your thumb to your pinky, like this, and kind of moving your wrist around, you should be able to see, if you have it, it's kind of hard to see on camera, but you'll see it like a big bone right here. You can kind of see that sticking out right there. That is a bone, kind of a tendon more, that is left over from when previous evolutions of humans were climbing trees. It was better for gripping things. They had this extra bone here that allowed them to better grip onto things. But eventually we didn't need to climb as much for food and for safety, and so it wasn't needed, and it kind of evolved out. So some people don't even have it at all. And like I said, what's weird is that I have it in this arm, and you can kind of see it, but I don't have it in this arm. So if I try to bend my arm and find that same bone, it's just not there. So you can look up pictures online for a little bit more of a clear image of what exactly it looks like, but try and look for that bone kind of running, the tendon running right down the middle right there, and see if you can find it on usually both of your arms or neither of your arms. So really cool little thing there that we have different vestigial structures that you guys can see and know the purpose of in your own body. You can see the evidence of evolution within yourself and in the world around you, and it's really, really cool. Now, there are so many other examples of vestigial structures, and if you come up with any, please let me know, because go ahead and comment them down below. We can chat about them because they're so cool. They're so weird that evolution, when we think of it, needs to be this perfect thing that creates the most fit of all organisms, but it's just not how it is. So it's really cool that we can look at different things. You can even look up the evidence. This is a kind of a fun one. You can go home, a little bit of homework to go home and try this, okay? You can go home and look up the evidence of previous second eyelids that we had, or of tails. Okay, so go look those ones up. See if you can find any other vestigial structures in humans or other animals that you want to share with the Bee Museum, and let us know. Otherwise, you're welcome to comment any subjects that you think would be interesting for Life Science Live in the future. So go ahead and comment those as well. Anything you want to learn about that you think would be really cool to talk about here at the Bee Museum. But otherwise, guys, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have an excellent weekend, everybody.